And one thing I should probably mention, if you go to share.allegorithmic.com and you go to meshes, you're going to see this GDC, whatever I called it, GDC FPS female. You can go ahead and download this and follow along if you'd like. It's got everything in there you need to follow along. Anyways, so we've talked about materials. Let's talk about smart materials and what smart materials are. And they're really cool, and you'll be able to make your own after we're done with this. But if you just go into smart materials here, and I still have rubber selected, so it's kind of narrowing it down to all the rubber ones. I'm going to get rid of that and check out some smart materials. So let's say I want to replace the face plastic with, I've got some painted steel here. So if I look, just kind of roll over my cursor here, you're going to see it's kind of a painted steel, and where it hits the edges, it kind of grimes away, or it scrapes away to an underlying metal. Let's say I want to replace my face plastic with that. So smart materials work a little bit differently than materials. You can't just create a fill layer and then tap it. A smart material is actually kind of like basically a folder full of layers, these kind of layers, that create a whole effect of stuff you can do. So instead of clicking, what we're going to basically do is drag this whole thing out, and you can put it anywhere in here. I'm just going to put it right at the top so we can kind of evaluate it first. And you're going to see automatically it's going to have a steel painted folder, and underneath that folder is going to be a lot of stuff. If you click this folder shut, it's going to go ahead and shut that down, and now you've just got a little steel painted thing with a little folder with an arrow. So if we look at steel painted, what we're going to see is, like I said, we've got a painted steel that looks kind of like it's got some bumps on it, and then as we get towards the edges where it kind of starts to wear out, it turns into light metal. So if we open up this folder, let's see how they kind of created this. So if I go here and immediately, here's our curvature mask, and you can turn these things on and off to see what they do. You can go in here and kind of see paint details and stuff, and it looks like if I zoom way in, the paint details are actually these little pockmark things on here. So that's all that's doing. If I go to paint color, this is where the bulk of the metal stuff is going on, I believe. I'm going to go ahead and click this properties window down. Just click and drag, give us a little bit more room to kind of check out what's going on here. So with paint color, the material side selected, not the mask side selected. There's a bunch of stuff in here we need to talk about, but on the material side, if we scroll down, you can see we can UV scale. So we can go ahead and play with the scale a little bit if we want to. We can change the color, so we can go ahead and make this like an orangey, kind of orangey yellow here. There's a levels and a fill. So basically, it looks like what they did was do a basic fill layer, which gives you access to these basic material settings right here, right? And then they did you can go up here to generate, you can do add a fill. And what they did was with a fill here, you can go ahead and choose with the color selected, go over here to procedurals, and you can go in here to black and white spots and drag that on. If we drag in black and white spot, that is black and white spots 3. If we do like cells 2 and drag that on, sorry, it looks like this object right here, so this has color, height, roughness, and metallicity. If I click the fill, that is basically using a black and white spots 3. You can actually kill this if you want to, and that'll just go ahead and change that out. I can change this to like a cells 2 into my base color, and that you can see is overlapping kind of a scratchy cells thing. We can do clouds to kind of break up that base color. So there's a lot of cool different things you can do. And on top of that fill, there's a level. So if you play around with this levels, you can see, the effect it's having on that fill layer, which is, clouds 3 in the base color. Tons and tons of stuff you can do manually. Speaking of manually, if you click on the mask area, we haven't gotten into generators yet, which is where, remember when you're in Substance Designer and you could drag in, it's actually the same thing in here, it's called a mask generator. If you go in here and you drag in dirt, and you double click dirt, and it's looking for your curvature map and your ambient occlusion map, and with those plugged in, it's able to tell, okay, in the recessed areas of the curvature map, since it's really dark, I'm going to put dirt in there. Same thing with the ambient occlusion, and then we're going to allow the end user to control the dirt level, the contrast, and the grunge amount. Exact same thing in Substance Painter. However, you can do all of that stuff manually, and that's what they did here. So you're going to see in the paint color, if you go down to the very bottom here, this is a fill layer. So they did, under the mask, they clicked this and they said add fill, and with that fill, what they did was filled it with the curvature map. So where that is, and underneath your textures, they took the curvature map and just dragged it in here and just had the curvature map selected. So here's my curvature map. Then they applied a blur, and then they applied a levels, and then they filled this with black and white spots 2, which is just a noise, and they put that layer to a linear dodge, blurred it, ran a levels, blurred it all together, and then that made a mask. So I roll over here, all those things together make up this mask. You can do the exact same thing in Substance Designer. If I go ahead and bring in all my helmet stuff here, and this will just give you a really quick visual representation of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go to Resources here. So we're going to take the curvature map. If I double click this, and we'll just open this up really big. So here's my curvature map, and what they did was they went ahead and added a blur. So we go grab our curvature map, and then we blur it out. We don't want to blur it that much, but we can just see, you know, here's our curvature map. Here it is blurred a little bit. Then they ran a levels. And if we just want to really pick out like the highlights of the edges and stuff, you can go ahead and do that. And then what they did was blend that. So here's our blend mode. I'm going to put this into the bottom one here. They went into the noises. They grabbed black and white spots 3. And in that layer with this blend mode, what they did was a linear dodge, I believe. So there's the linear dodge, and then they took this one, and then they ran a blur. And then another levels. And with all those layered together, they were able to get a very black and white dark mask. Now, like I said, you could do the exact same thing in here. If we just click these closed, you're going to see this mask update. So here's the mask right here. It's just a curvature map. If we add the blur and then we add the levels, that goes ahead and gives us a lot of contrast in our curvature map. And then we're going to go ahead and fill a black and white noise with a linear dodge, and that's going to kind of break up our curvature map. And then we're going to blur that, levels it, blur it again, and here we go, the final result, all to create a mask. Now, like I said, you can go in here and use generators to do that. This is the manual way. Just wanted to show you while we were talking about smart materials. And then we've got more metal details, and I think that's the underlying metal here. So we turn off paint color. You're going to see that's the underlying metal, and then that's the paint color over it, again being masked out by that manual masking here. And then we got the base metal here, and all that put together in this one folder is steel painted. So if I turn this off, it goes away. If I turn it on, it covers up everything. Now, of course, I don't want it to cover up everything, so I want to right-click this and do Add Mask with Color Selection. With color selection selected, pick everywhere where it's red, and there we go. I don't need face plastic anymore because, you know, it's underneath my metal, still painted, so I can go ahead and select that, click minus, and there it is with a smart material assigned, and then everything else beneath it.